The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
I invite you all, as you start this special session, I invite you all to listen to this verse that comes to us from the Hebrew Scriptures. It's Psalm. The psalmist says, "O Lord, you have examined me, and you know me through and through. You discern even my thoughts from afar." Let us pray. Loving God, it is your nature to hold us in your living presence. It is our nature to think of you or think of others only momentarily. When we become so fixed on ourselves, we become so limited. So this afternoon, oh God, be with this house. Be with this house that they may be the best that they can be. Be in this house today, be in their work, be in their deliberations, in all of their endeavors this day. May they listen and learn from one another. May they have courageous spirits and eternal insights needed for service. So bless their work. This is our prayer. Amen.
The chaplain for today is the Reverend Richard D. Buller from Valley Community Presbyterian Church, Golden Valley, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A copy of the proclamation from the governor is on each member's desk and is also online. The clerk will take the roll, and members, when the clerk takes the roll, please state your name, your location slowly and clearly, and present.
Acom.
Acom, St. Paul, present.
Acom, St. Paul, present. Albright.
Albright, Spring Lake Township, present.
Albright, Spring Lake Township, present. Anderson.
Anderson, Barsness Township, present.
Anderson, Barsness Township, present. Backer.
Backer, Browns Valley, present.
Backer, Browns Valley, present. Bonner.
Bonner, St. Paul, present.
Bonner, St. Paul, present. Barr. Barr. Baker.
Baker, Wilmer, present.
Baker, Wilmer, present. Becker, Finn. Becker, Finn, St. Paul, present. Bennett.
Bennett, Albert Lee, present.
Bennett, Albert Lee, present. Bernardi.
Bernardi, St. Paul, present.
Bernardi, St. Paul, present. Bierman.
Bierman, St. Paul, present.
Bierman, St. Paul, present. Bowl. Bowl, St. Paul, present. Brand.
Brand, St. Paul, present.
Brand, St. Paul, present. Cantrell.
Cantrell, St. Paul, present.
Cantrell, St. Paul, present. Carlson A.
Carlson A, St. Paul, present.
Carlson A, St. Paul, present. Carlson L.
Carlson L, St. Paul, present.
Carlson L, St. Paul, present. Christensen.
Christensen, St. Paul, present.
Christensen, St. Paul, present. Claflin.
Claflin, St. Paul, present.
Claflin, St. Paul, present. Considine.
Considine, Mankato, present.
Considine, Mankato, present. Daniels.
Daniels, Faribault, present.
Daniels, Faribault, present. Doubt. Doubt. Davids. David, St. Paul, present. Davney.
Daphne, St. Paul, present.
Davney, St. Paul, present. Dean.
Dean, St. Paul, present.
Dean, St. Paul, present. Damath.
Damath, Cold Spring, present.
Damath, Cold Spring, present. Detmer. Detmer, St. Paul, present. Drazkowski. Drazkowski, St. Paul, present. Eklund.
Eklund, International Falls, present.
Eklund International Falls, present. Edelson.
Edelson Edina, present.
Edelson Edina, present. Elkins.
Elkin St. Paul, present.
Elkins St. Paul, present. Erickson.
Erickson St. Paul, present.
Erickson St. Paul, present. Fabian, excused. Fisher.
Fisher, St. Paul, present.
Fisher, St. Paul, present. Franzen. Franzen.
Franson St. Paul, present.
Franzen, St. Paul, present. Freiberg.
Freiberg, Green Lake, present.
Freiberg, Green Lake, present. Garofalo.
Garofalo, Farmington, present.
Garofalo, Farmington, present. Gomez.
Gomez St. Paul, present.
Gomez, St. Paul, present. Green. Green. Grossel.
Grossel, Clearbrook, present.
Grossel, Clearbrook, present. Gruenhagen.
Gruenhagen, Glencoe, present.
Gruenhagen, Glencoe, present. Gunther. Gunther. Haley.
Haley Red Wing, present.
Haley, Red Wing, present. Halverson.
Halverson St. Paul, present.
Halverson, St. Paul, present. Hamilton.
Hamilton, St. Paul, present.
Hamilton, St. Paul, present. Hanson.
Hanson, St. Paul, present.
Hanson, St. Paul, present. Hassan.
Hassan, Minneapolis, present.
Hassan, Minneapolis, present. Hausman.
Hausman St. Paul, present.
Hausman, St. Paul, present. Heinrich.
Heinrich Anoka, present.
Heinrich, Anoka, present. Heinzman.
Heinzman, Nisswa, present.
Heinzman, Nisswa, present. Herr.
Her St. Paul, present.
Herr, St. Paul, present. Hertos.
Hertos, Greenfield, present.
Hertos, Greenfield, present. Hornstein.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present. Howard.
Howard, St. Paul, present.
Howard, St. Paul, present. Hewitt.
Hewitt, St. Paul, present.
Hewitt, St. Paul, present. Johnson. Johnson, St. Paul, present. Jordan.
Jordan St. Paul, present.
Jordan, St. Paul, present. Jurgens.
Jurgens, Cottage Grove, present.
Jurgens, Cottage Grove, present. Kiel. Kiel, St. Paul, present. Cleveland.
Cleveland St. Paul, present.
Cleveland, St. Paul, present. Cagle.
Tago Spring Lake Park, present.
Cagle, Spring Lake Park, present. Katiza Watoon.
Katiza Watoon, Eden Prairie, present.
Katiza Watoon, Eden Prairie, present. Kosnick.
Cosmic, Lakeville, present.
Kosnick, Lakeville, present. Creshaw.
Creshaw, Little Falls, present.
Creshaw, Little Falls, present. Kunish Podine.
Kunish Podine St. Paul, present.
Kunish Podine, St. Paul, present. Lehman.
Lehman, Cohasset, present.
Lehman, Cohasset, present. Lee.
Lee, Minneapolis, present.
Lee, Minneapolis, present. Lesh.
Lesh, St. Paul, present.
Lesh, St. Paul, present. Liebling.
Liebling, Rochester, present.
Liebling, Rochester, present. Lean.
Lean, Moorhead, present.
Lean, Moorhead, present. Lily.
Lily, North St. Paul, present.
Lily, North St. Paul, present. Lippert.
Lippert, Northfield, present.
Lippert, Northfield, present. Lislegard.
Lislegard, Aurora, present.
Lislegard, Aurora, present. Long. Long, St. Paul, present. Lucero.
Lucero, our great capital, present.
Lucero, St. Paul, present. Lewick.
Lewick, Aiken, present.
Lewick, Aiken, present. Mahoney.
Mahoney, St. Paul, present.
Mahoney, St. Paul, present. Man.
Man, Burnsville, present.
Mann, Burnsville present. Mariani. Mariani. Markwart.
Markwart, Dunn Township, present.
Markwart, Dinus Township present. Mason.
Mason, St. Paul, present.
Mason, St. Paul present. McDonald.
McDonald, Delano, present.
McDonald, Delano present. Mecklin.
Mecklin, Becker Township, present.
Mecklin, Becker Township present. Miller.
Miller, Princeburg, present.
Miller, Princeburg present. Moeller.
Moeller, St. Paul, present.
Moeller, St. Paul present. Moran.
Moran, St. Paul, present.
Moran, St. Paul present. Morrison.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present.
Morrison, Deep Haven present. Munson.
Munson, Lincoln Township, present.
Munson, Lincoln Township present. Murphy.
Murphy, Hermantown, present.
Murphy, Hermantown present. Nash. Nash, St. Paul present. Nelson M.
Nelson M., St. Paul, present.
Nelson M, St. Paul present. Nelson N.
Nelson N., Clover Township, present.
Nelson N, Clover Township present. New. New, St. Paul present. Nor.
Nor, Minneapolis, present.
Nor, Minneapolis present. Nornis.
Nornis, Fergus Falls, present.
Nornis, Fergus Falls present. Novotny. Novotny, St. Paul present. O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll, Sartell, present.
O'Driscoll, Sartell present. Olson.
Olson, Duluth, present.
Olson, Duluth present. O'Neill.
O'Neill, Maple Lake, present.
O'Neill, Maple Lake present. Pulowski.
Pulowski, Winona, present.
Pulowski, Winona present. Purcell.
Purcell, St. Paul, present.
Purcell, St. Paul present. Petersburg.
Petersburg, Waseca, present.
Petersburg, Waseca present. Pearson.
Pearson, Rochester, present.
Pearson, Rochester present. Pinto.
Pinto, St. Paul, present.
Pinto, St. Paul present. Poppy.
Poppy, St. Paul, present.
Poppy, St. Paul present. Poston.
Poston, Lakeshore, present.
Poston, Lakeshore present. Pryor.
Pryor, St. Paul, present.
Pryor, St. Paul present. Quam.
Quam, Byron, present.
Quam, Byron present. Richardson.
Richardson, Mendota Heights, present.
Richardson, Mendota Heights present. Robbins.
Robbins, Maple Grove, present.
Robbins, Maple Grove present. Runbeck.
Runbeck, Circle Pines, present.
Runbeck, Circle Pines present. Sandell.
Sandell, Woodbury, present.
Sandell, Woodbury present. Sandsted.
Sandsted, Hibbing, present.
Sandsted, Hibbing present. Sauk.
Sauk, Rochester, present.
Sauk, Rochester present. Schumacher.
Schumacher, St. Paul, present.
Schumacher, St. Paul present. Schultz.
Schultz, Duluth, present.
Schultz, Duluth present. Scott.
Scott, Andover, present.
Scott, Andover present. Stevenson.
Stevenson, St. Paul, present.
Stevenson, St. Paul present. Sundin.
Sundin, Itasca County, present.
Sundin, Itasca County present. Swazinski.
Swazinski, Nordland Township, present.
Swazinski, Northern Township present. Tabke.
Tabke, St. Paul, present.
Tabke, St. Paul present. Tice.
Tice, St. Cloud, present.
Tice, St. Cloud present. Torkelson.
Torkelson, Hanska, present.
Torkelson, Hanska present. Erdahl.
Erdahl, Acton Township, present.
Erdahl, Acton Township present. Vang.
Vang, Brooklyn Center, present.
Vang, Brooklyn Center present. Vogel.
Vogel, Elko Newmarket, present.
Vogel, Elko Newmarket present. Wagenius.
Wagenius, Solom Township, present.
Wagenius, Solom Township present. Waslewick.
Waslewick, St. Paul, present.
Waslewick, St. Paul present. West.
West Blaine, present.
West, Blaine present. Winkler. Winkler, St. Paul, present. Walgamot.
Walgamot, St. Paul, present.
Walgamot, St. Paul, present. Zhang Jie.
John J. St. Paul, present.
Zhang Jie, St. Paul, present. Zhang Ti. Zhang Ti. Joachim.
Joachim Hopkins, present.
Joachim Hopkins, present. Speaker Hartman. Speaker Hartman, St. Paul, present. Barr. Barr. Doubt, excused.
Doubt, St. Paul, present.
Doubt, St. Paul, present. Green. Green. Gunther.
Gunther Fairmont, present.
Gunther, Fairmont, present. Mariani.
Paul, present.
Mariani, St. Paul, present. Zhang Ti. Zhang Ti.
A quorum is present, and pursuant to Minnesota Statutes 2018, Section 3.073, I declare the House organized for this special session. Representative Winkler offers the following motion.
Winkler moves that the chief clerk be and is hereby instructed to inform the Senate and the governor by message that the House of Representatives is now duly organized pursuant to law for this third special session.
Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, the chief clerk has accurately read my motion, and I ask for favorable votes.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The chief clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction of first reading of House Files 1 through 29.
First reading, House Files 1 through 29. The member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, Minnesota has lost a very special legislator. David Bishop represented part of Rochester in this House for 20 years, retiring in 2002. He was a representative in the truest sense of the word. He put his district first, always ahead of his party. He was a deal maker who loved digging into the issues and finding a way to get to consensus. Dave Bishop was a valued member of this House and will be greatly missed by all who knew him. We send our deepest condolences to his wife, Bea, and the rest of his family. Madam Speaker, I ask for a moment of silence in memory of David Bishop.
Members, please join me in a moment of silence for former Representative Dave Bishop. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, members, we're going to be having a recess until approximately 1:30. I believe that Republicans will caucus, and DFL members, we will be caucusing immediately upon recess. And so, Madam Speaker, I move a recess to the call of the chair.
Representative Winkler moves a recess until 1:30 p.m. sharp. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion prevails. The House stands in recess until 1:30 p.m. sharp.